Welcome to 40 Days Till a Better You. This week's theme is forgiveness, and I want to look at Maimonides' Mishnah Torah, his laws on repentance, on Teshuvah, chapter 2, Mishnah 9. And there, Maimonides writes as follows: Repentance and Yom Kippur only atone for sins committed between man and God. And then he gives a few examples. It continues, but sins between a man and his fellow man are not absolved until he makes restitutions of what he owes and begs the forgiveness of his neighbor. It goes on, and although he might have made restitution, he is obliged to pacify his friend and to beg his forgiveness, or even if he offended him in words, he is obliged to appease him and to implore him until his friend forgives him. And if his neighbor still does not forgive him, then he brings 3 others to implore the neighbor for forgiveness. And if he still refuses, he should bring a second, even a third committee. And if he remains obstinate, he may leave him to himself and pass on, for the sin then rests upon him who refuses forgiveness. But if it happens to be his master, he should go and come to him for forgiveness even 1,000 times until he forgives him. There's a lot going on here in this law. The first piece is about what type of forgiveness does Yom Kippur, or rather what kind of atonement can a person achieve on Yom Kippur? And mainly those are the sins between us and God. But sins between us and fellow people, we don't just get based on waving, by coming to shul and beating our heart and saying a magic formula. Rather, we actually have to go out and seek forgiveness from those people. And then, once we do that and have made restitution, then on Yom Kippur we can be absolved of those sins. But there's a problem. What happens if the person doesn't want to forgive you? So the next part of this spends some time saying, well, you have to go and make it right. And if they refuse to do it, then you bring the support of other people who will come along and back you up and really show that you are sincere in your forgiveness. And if this other person still won't forgive you, then you say, okay, I at least tried and I will have to move on. And this is ultimately their thing, not necessarily mine. I'm sincere in my forgiveness. This begs the following, which is the last line of this teaching, that Maimonides says, right, that if it still weighs on you, even though it's not on you, you still can, there's no reason why you can't go back and even apologize up to 1,000 times. If it's still weighing on you, then you should speak about it and not hold it in. The flip side of this is there ever a sin that we are the person who doesn't want to forgive? Is there ever a sin that we can't forgive another person for? And it's a very interesting question about whether people change. It's an interesting question about, is there ever a way to redeem yourself from certain sins? And at least for this Mishnah, for the Maimonides here, is a strong conviction that people can change, and that if someone's holding on to a grudge for so long, right, perhaps that person, right, it's on them and no longer on the person who's not forgiving and not on the person seeking forgiveness. The flip side of that could be that if the sin is so great, perhaps it might be hard to find a committee of 3 or 3 committees of 3 to back you up on it. If what you've done is so terrible, perhaps people won't back you up. But I think it raises this question as we go into Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, this season of repentance. In what ways are we obligated to seek forgiveness? Do we just do it once, or do we have a commitment to really try to show the other person that we are sorry? And the flip side, if we're the ones who are holding the grudge, in what ways do we need the other person? What do they need to do? What do they need to say in order for them to be forgiven? And of course, if the unforgivable sins happen, where does that lead us? I think is something that this season begs us to think about as we seek forgiveness from others and offer our own forgiveness to those who have wronged us. There are 12 days till Rosh Hashanah, 21 days until Yom Kippur, 22 days till a better you. Let's make every day count.